Hello everyone, this is Gary from Fantastic Fundas, and today in this lecture we are going to talk about various topics. For example, we will be covering the relationship between the Congress and the Muslim League and their reaction to each other, and then we'll also talk about that how communalism was sought to be contained or how communalism was sought to be controlled, and then we will also talk about the weaknesses of communalism. And then after that we will move to the extreme phase of communalism. That would be the next lecture, not this one. But before I start with these topics over here, there are a few things that I would like to talk to you. This is a background. Actually, you should know that what is happening and what stage of history we are at. This really helps in better memory and to understand the overall situation, what we call the bird's eye view. Now the situation is that we have reached approximately 1938-39. The World War II is just about to start. Congress has won the elections and it has resigned. That is what Congress election, that is what we have already covered. Now this lecture is about communalism because I wanted to cover everything that is important to this point before I proceed ahead in time regarding this history lecture series. Now the communalism over here, we have already defined communalism. We have already defined it in proper detail in lecture number 44 and 44, and that was done at that time because the mains exam was approaching and many of you had emailed me to cover the important topics, and I did that. Now I have done these, a part of these lectures. This is a sort of repetition in lecture number 74, 75 and 76, but I will suggest you to listen to these lectures also because they are presented in a much better manner than the earlier lectures. The structure of these lectures is way better than earlier ones, the 74, 75, 76, and all these three lectures have some extra points when we compare it to lecture 44 and 45 regarding communalism. In any case, whatever the case may be, it is there. What the lecture 74, 75, 76 do not have is the Hindu communalism and Muslim communalism. These two things have been covered earlier only, so I will not be dwelling on them now, though I will be discussing the extreme phase of the Hindu communalism and Muslim communalism in the upcoming lecture when I talk about the extreme phase in a lecture after this one, right? So this is about it. Now let's begin with the today's lecture. This lecture is related to the end of the liberal phase of the communalism. We all know that there is communalism and we want to end it. Now this is the final phase of the communalism, which is rising out of the mistakes, I will say, of the Congress and the Muslim League put together. And then we will discuss in a very small detail that how it was tried to be controlled, and then we will talk about few weaknesses related to this topic, and that will end the liberal phase. Now we know that Tilak and Jinnah, they were quite active, and then right in the 1916 there was a Lucknow Pact, and that in this pact Hindus and Muslims got united. I will not go into details of this Lucknow Pact. We have already done it and you can refer to the earlier lecture for this. Separate electorates were introduced in this, and they were not introduced, they were accepted here by the Congress as well, and which many said was a mistake, but that was later on, and it said that after the event has happened, even the fool is wise. So that's the normal thing that was happening. Now positive side was that it enthused a political Indian, but the bad side was this, because of acceptance of these separate electorates, that it led to communalism, because ultimately it is based on the division of the people. Hindu-Muslim unity did reach at its peak at this time, especially after the World War I, regarding the Rowlatt Satyagraha, Khilafat movement, and also the NCM, non-cooperation movement. Hindu-Muslim unity was rising. Imagine the unity was so good. I hope you remember this example of Swami Shraddhanandji. This Swami, he was Shraddhanand, he was a staunch Arya Samajist, and he was asked by the Muslims to preach from the pulpit of Jama Masjid. Swamiji was asked to preach from there, while Saifuddin Kichlu, a Muslim, was given the key to the Golden Temple. So Saifuddin Kichlu is important, Swami Shraddhananda is important here. So it shows that unity was at its peak. Not just this, the landlord, the communalist, ex-bureaucrats, everyone disassociated from the Muslim League, as everyone started saying that Muslim League is seemingly now secular. So the communalist people started separating, started getting away from Muslim League, because Muslim League's actions were deemed to be secular by them. And we have already covered Muslim League in the earlier lecture 44-45. I've shared there, probably it's lecture 45. You see, many people say that the Gandhi support to Khilafat issue, or Congress support to Khilafat issue was a communal idea. But was it a communal idea? Let's explore this logic first of all. This argument of the people that Congress should not have supported something which was inherently Muslim for them is and that because that promoted communalism is a wrong idea. Why it's a wrong idea? I'll give you the logic of it. You see, number one, it created a national anti-imperialist consciousness. That is a very important thing. Not just this, you see, Akali movement impacted Sikhs. Now we should not have picked up this movement also, if that was the case. Or an anti-untouchability movement, which was definitely related to the nationalist movement, anti-untouchability movement that was related purely to Hindus. So why not Khilafat movement? It's a wrong argument. It's a wrong accusation on Mahatma Gandhi as well, that they picked up the wrong issue, because one is related to Hindus, one is related to the Sikhs, and then why cannot we have one issue of Khilafat movement related to Muslims? The problem is that it's not the leaders at fault here, it's the people, is the followers who are at fault here, who wrongly interpreted this movement. Now, it's not that Khilafat movement was not without weakness. Of course, it had its weaknesses. That is why it turned more into a communal thing. Because not every time, it's not always that political consciousness, the religious political consciousness can be turned into secular nationalist movement, and that is where this movement failed. It was a religious political consciousness, which is where nothing wrong with it, because as we see, there was Akali movement, there was anti-untouchability movement. So religious is there, political is there, but to turn it into a secular nationalist movement, that is where this movement was not able to see much success. And then the Khilafat leaders, they used fatwas and other religious sanctions. This encouraged looking at the political issue through the religious spectacle. Right? You are looking at a political issue through the prism of what? Religion. Through the prism of religion, you are looking at a political issue. Whereas in the other aspects, Akali movement and anti-untouchability movement, they of course had their own Sikh tinge or a Hindu tinge to them, but in spite of that, they were essentially nationalist movement. Nation was connected as one in that, but it could not happen in Khilafat movement. And why it could not happen? Because we were looking at a political issue from a religious angle, but here it remained purely political issues. That is why, and that is why most of the people, this is one very technical point, and most of the people do not understand history, who just go on to blabber anything. For example, this issue only, that why did Mahatma Gandhi pick up the Khilafat issue? Very important point for you to remember. Now, after this, what had happened, we all know the story of NCM and how NCM was withdrawn in February 1922, right? And all that story, right? Now, after this, there were communal rights. People were still in the fighting mode. and there were the communal rights, and communal ideology of the loyalist Muslims came to the fore. The loyalist Muslim, loyal to the British Empire, and not just Muslims, even Hindu Mahasabha, about which I have talked in great detail already in lecture 44, 45. It was revived in 1923 here, right? And there was one more reason of the spread of communalism, and this was related to the split of the Swarajist. We have already done this topic again. You see, I will need to refer to the earlier lectures, and if you have listened to the earlier lectures, the history from here onwards would be a cakewalk. Lot of people tell me that history, especially 1935 to 47, is very complex. It looks complex, it feels complex because you have not understood the earlier history well. If you know that well, this will be a cakewalk. Now, suffragists were split, and you know this, right? There were people who were called as, I hope you remember this, called as responsivists, and they offered cooperation to the government to safeguard the Hindu interest. Now, these people were communal. They said, we will save the Hindu interest. And Lala Laj, who were the members, who were the responsivists? Lala Lajpat Rai ji, and Madan Mohan Malviya was there, and N.C. Kelkar was there. I must warn you about one thing. In spite of all these people having Hindu tinge, whether Hindu or the Muslims having Muslim tinge, or the Muslims, so whether the Hindu or the Muslims, all those names, including Jinnah, before the 1937 elections, they were committed to the nation in spite of their religious matters concerned. I can call them only partially communal here, not pure, not the communal in the true sense of the word, right? Though they did contribute to communalism, that cannot be denied. But you have to be careful when you write about this. You just cannot outrightly say that these were communalists, because the real communalists, they will come when I talk about the extreme phase of communalism. But here I can say the base was laid. So on the other side, these were the responsivists. On the other side, you remember there were non-responsivists. Do you remember any name? There was this one name, Moti Lal Nehru, and he was accused as anti-Hindu and favored cow slaughter, and he also ate beef. Hindu started calling him that. You know, these kind of people continue to exist. Just because somebody is supporting secular, he's called as anti-Hindu. Same thing happened with Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was murdered for this very reason, and that's how it goes, right? 30th January, that was the date. Now, more dramatic shift was the worst shift was of Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, who said that the Congress now is making Hindu government in India. This was the worst thing that could be said at that time, and this was said by Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. These two, they created a lot of problem. And then there were many riots after this, and in all these riots, Simon Commission report said that in India there were 112 riots between 1922 and 27. Of course, this claim is not 100% true. The situation was worse, and because they wanted to show that they are a peaceful government, so they always underplay the things, right? Now we understand that there is communalism and the liberal phase, but how to contain it? That is the issue that we will be discussing now. So the topic over here is containing communalism. So the first method that was used was through the process of negotiations to contain the communalism. Congress leaders, they acted as even mediators. So mediation was another method to control the communalism, of course, between different groups, and even they compromised with the Muslim leaders and the Hindu communist leaders who were indulged in this wrong deed. And the best example of this actually is of 1928. What happened in 1928, you know this thing, that Simon Commission was coming to India, and to protest against Simon Commission, an All India conference was held. And at the same time, the Muslim leaders, so all India conferences being held on one side, and on the other side the Muslim leaders met in Delhi in 1927, and here they gave 4 basic demands which are known as what? Delhi proposals. I've already discussed this with you, so I hope you remember what are Delhi proposals. And then after this, the proposal that came through the Congress, that was by the all party convention, and that was given by the Nehru, and thus it was called the Nehru report. But it was put up before the Congress session in 1928, but it could not be passed because it was not unanimously agreed upon. So what to do? So some of the members of the Muslim League, they even accepted joint electorate. Joint electorates were accepted by some of the members of the Muslim League. Now this was a big breakthrough, and and rest of them, the Muslim members, there were 3 amendments which was moved by Jinnah, which are today known as the Calcutta Amendments. I'm not discussing any detail here. I've already done it in the earlier lecture. Let's not waste time on that. You can go and see those lectures, right? But then at the same time there was some opposition also. For example, a large section of Muslims over here, it was under Muhammad Shafi and Aga Khan, they refused to these amendments over here. So they said we will not agree to these Calcutta amendments which were proposed. So what did they do? When they said we will oppose it, so they still wanted separate electorate. That was the issue. Calcutta amendments was offering acceptance of joint electorates. So Hindu Mahasabha and Sikh League, they were opposed to the part of the report which dealt with the Sindh and Northwest Frontier Province. The whole issue of these 4 or 5 incidences that are discussed together can be discussed here also. And Bengal and Punjab, all these were confrontational issues, and in Punjab also. So they also opposed the Jinnah's demands, and all communalists now joined together. And you see, when all communalists came together, Jinnah was left alone, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And when Jinnah is left alone, he will try to do something which he is unable to do. So he cannot unable to oppose all the communalists together. So he will fall in line with them, and all communalist demands were put together. All these people got together to bring forward what are known as Jinnah's 14 points. You already know all this. If you don't remember, please go and revise this lecture. I can't be discussing it here, but I'm giving you a reference that how things were moving regarding communalism. Now, this strategy of negotiations with the communal leaders was, of course, had its limitations. How far can you talk to a communal leader? Because when you talk to a communal leader, so I'm telling you the limitations of this strategy. See, when you talk to a communal leader, there are limits to it, because you have certain standards and you cannot cross those standards, right? They were inherently at certain faults. Communal leaders, they were the representative of their communal interests, so how can you talk to them even? And then their politics were recognized by the Congress, because when they talked to them, and such kind of politics was not suited to the interests of India. So their wrong politics, which was based on communalism, was being recognized in this method. Then if you talk to communal leaders, then what would happen of the secular leaders? They say we are fighting against secular communals. For example, the secular Muslims like Azad and Ansari and Asif Ali. So all these people are secular, they are fighting, but then who will take their care? And it also became difficult to expose the communalism and semi-communalism of leaders like Madan Mohan Malviya or Lala Lajpat Rai. You see, even authors, see, any of the views presented here, this is what I have read in the books. So that's what I'm sharing with you, and of course on various websites and few other places. So Lala Lajpat Rai, so they try to call them semi-communalist, and Maulana Muhammad Ali, he was also a semi-communalist, not a full communalist. They worked within the Congress and they were kind of communal. And Hindu and Sikh communalists, they couldn't accept the concession for the Muslim communalists. As soon as one group was appeased, other would get angry, they would start raising their demand, and this is what exactly happened in 1928 to 29, and Jinnah is an example of it. So real answer to the communalism is in what? Is in opposition to communalism. And but the truth is that in the end, Congress of that time could not give a deeper analysis of the communal problem of India of that time. That is the fact, and Congress could not do much regarding that. Congress, in other words, simply failed. So these are the issues involved. Now, before I end this lecture on communalism, but communalism also had few weak spots. If I tell you that the communalism of this era, it was strong as well as weak, how will you answer this question? Strong, you already know. Weak, I'll just quickly tell you few points. For example, during even the right up to 1920s, though the phenomena started in 1875, right up to 1920s, communalism was not pervasive. Number one. Number two, it was largely confined to the larger cities. It was not, it didn't spread much to the smaller towns or villages as it did to the larger cities. Hindu communalists, they had very little support, and Muslim communalists had also had a very, very narrow social base. So the social base of the communalists was very weak. Number four is that this trade union movement and the peasant movement and the youth movement, trade union, peasant and youth movement, all of these, they were largely, almost 100%, 99% probably, they were secular in themselves. And the reaction to the Simon Commission revealed the weaknesses of the Muslim League, that and Hindu Mahasabha also, that both the groups were divided on the issue whether Simon Commission should be supported or should be opposed. Then number 6 is the CDM, the 1930 to 34. We have discussed this CDM movement in detail, but then good thing is that the nationalist movement, for the first time, because of CDM, everyone asked me what is the role of Mahatma Gandhi. This is one more role of Mahatma Gandhi, that because he conducted CDM. Because of the CDM, the nationalist movement engulfed into its ambit two important areas where Muslim majority was there. These were NWFP and Kashmir. This all because of huge credit for this is goes to Gandhi only. And communal parties and all, they remained quite weak right up to 1937. What happens in 1937? Can you think of? Yes, elections. They lose elections, and when you lose election, what do? You get angry and you spread more hatred so that you can win the election next time. In 1932, if you remember, the communal award, on which UPSC likes to ask question also, the communal award was given in 1932. Gandhi also opposed this particular award by keeping a fast unto death. This also spreaded the communalism. So this is the scene of this weaknesses of the communalism. But because this communal award was opposed by Gandhi and then also by the Dalits at that time, through Pune Pact it was opposed, and so on. So what I mean to say is that yes, communalism had its own weak points also. Now it's time to end this lecture, so I'll just clear the screen and tell you quickly what we'll be doing in the next lecture. In the next coming 1 or 2 lectures, we'll be covering the phase of extreme communalism. I will try to cover maximum content in the minimum of time in the upcoming lecture, so that we can quickly wrap up this history series, right? And then before you go, I've done my job, now is your turn. Have you shared these videos? If not, please do that as soon as possible. And if you like this video, then please do click on the like button. And lastly, if you want these videos to come in your email box, then you will need to subscribe to us, and that you can do by clicking on this subscribe button over here. So that is all, and thank you so much for watching this video.